All right, welcome to Action Corp Radio. It is July 24th, 2008, Thursday, and my name is Chris, and with me today is Seth, and we're going to be talking a little bit today about the recent release of the iPhone 3G and the iPhone 2.0 firmware software that came along with that, and then we'll talk a little bit about the App Store, and we'll probably talk a bit about E3, recent stuff that's happening, going on there, and maybe try to make this a short show. We'll talk a little bit about what we're playing. Let's go ahead and talk about the first topic here, which is, of course, the release of the recent iPhone 3G, which, you know, is still being released.
What do you mean, as far as distribution?
Yeah.
Like trying to get it out the door?
I mean, I remember a year ago waiting in line for the iPhone, the first iPhone, and none of my other friends were. I was going to be like the guinea pig. But it was a huge event. You know, everybody called that, you know, iPhone Day or iDay or whatever. Millions of people, I don't know millions, but, you know, lots of people lined up at Apple stores and AT&T stores all across the nation to get theirs. But by the end of the day, you could just walk in and pick one up. I thought the demand was huge then, but here it is a year later, and they're selling the 3G, and there's still lines. And it's been like, what has it been like?
It's because, well, what is it, 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's been a while
3
now.
weeks?
It's like the demand is still huge. They still don't have enough of them. It's almost, I wasn't expecting that. I have to be honest with you. I thought that like it was going to be a repeat of last year, that, you know, everybody would wait in line, and then by tomorrow or the next day or whatever, people would just be walking in the stores and picking them up.
Yeah, it seemed like they got it wrong this time, and I guess they underestimated the slow demand as opposed to the immediate fanboy camp in line kind of thing, but still a very big solid push that, you know, the first 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, I accidentally thought that a lot of people would be like, oh, well, this is just a new version of the iPhone, so there wasn't going to be like as much demand, and I think I grossly underestimated the price point, because there are so many people now who bought the new iPhone because they didn't buy the old one because of the price, and now it's just like, oh, well, now I'm going to get one. And so all those people are finally getting one, and it's just a huge demand. And also you have to factor in, too, the fact that it's been released all over the world. It's simultaneously.
Yeah. Well, and I guess Apple was thinking, well, this is more of an incremental, you know, this isn't as revolutionary as the first phone was. I mean, the first phone was groundbreaking. The second one, this is more of a tweaking of the original idea. It's not necessarily the, oh, wow, this is so different. But, I mean, the little differences it makes, I think, were enough to suck a lot of people in. And like you said, the price getting down was very attractive to people.
I think they were shooting for that. They were thinking, well, if we get the price low enough, people will buy it. Clearly they were right, because, like I said, there's still people on lists. You go to an Apple store or an AT&T store right now and say, you know, I want an iPhone. You don't walk out with one. It's been 2 weeks, and so what they do is they put you on a list, and then you get it a few days later. I mean, that's how high the demand still is for this thing.
Yep, it is surprising. I think the 2.0 software, there's probably a little bit of a misconception that you need the 3G phone to do the 2.0 software. For you know, that was one thing I found that was kind of interesting in line that morning. There were a lot of people that just didn't even know exactly what they were buying. They were buying a new iPhone. And they, like, talking about the 2.0 software, talking about the GPS, a lot of people were just like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. It was more that, oh, it's a cheap iPhone. And I think that drove a lot of not necessarily the fanboys or the geeks, but the more, you know, soccer moms and business guys and stuff. They're like, oh, yeah, I can do an iPhone now.
Yeah, and you think about how much people had known about it at that point. You know, it had been a whole year. People had been seeing little glimpses of iPhones in the hands of the people who, like myself, who were willing to pay $600 up front, and even $300 once they had lowered the price. Those people who were bandishing about their cool iPhones and its interface, here it is a year later, and now they're saying, well, now I can afford it. And so that's when they're going ahead and doing it. But you're right, the 2.0 software, it is misleading. I think it was on purpose, because, you know, they kind of want you to sell you this idea that now you can do other stuff on your iPhone you couldn't do before, when, of course, the 2.0 software became available to everyone, even the people who have the old iPhone like me, who I still have my original first-generation iPhone, and I haven't yet upgraded.
Well, let's go into the differences of the two. One, probably the easiest one, is the physical shape of it. It's a little more tapered around the edges, but it is a little fatter in the center, probably to get the extra hardware, the extra 3G radio and all that stuff into it. Then you've got the location-based stuff, which is the assisted GPS. For me, there was a difference of doubling the capacity from a 4 gig to an 8 gig, so that was attractive, although, you know, some people had 8 gigs already, so that's not that groundbreaking, but that was still a big deal for me. And then just the 3G itself, the 3G data is really, really fast. I was very surprised.
Almost as fast as Wi-Fi. It's getting right up there.
It really is. I was very surprised when I did it the first time. I was like, oh, I forgot to turn Wi-Fi off, and I hadn't.
Right. And I have to say, too, having held yours, the fact that the edges are tapered might seem like a trivial thing, but when you hold the new 3G in your hand, it feels so much thinner in a weird way because you know it's fatter in the center.
I really like it.
Now, and they've done some things behind the scenes, too. I mean, it's apparently got a more robust battery, although battery life has been kind of an issue for a lot of people with the 3G because...
Yeah, me included.
Yeah, with the different radio in it, I think it's a more power-hungry radio, and so if you leave 3G on all the time, then you might not get quite the same performance battery-wise that you got on the original iPhone. There's been a lot of people talking about that, but although I get the impression that that may be something they can tweak in software.
You know, one thing we haven't talked about that really kind of used to be annoying with this phone that I don't know why this wasn't a bigger deal to me. I can put my phone right next to a speaker now, and it doesn't go...
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't do that at all.
Yeah, the new 3G frequencies, it's a whole different radio frequency, or several, actually. And so, yeah, they don't interfere with your typical computer speakers or any of these other devices that aren't properly shielded.
That's a huge plus.
Yeah.
Syncing it at night, because I think like most people, you put your iPhone next to your computer to sync it, and then all of a sudden, all night, it goes... Burp, 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 burp.
You know, a weird thing, too, and I don't understand why this could be the case, but that hasn't been happening to me since I've upgraded.
Really?
Yeah, at work. I'm not getting that thing on the phone either because I have like one of those network IP phones, and it would always do that. And ever since I've upgraded to 2.0, I don't think I've ever heard my iPhone make that noise. But that has to be coincidental because I'm sure it has something to do with the radio.
Okay, if anybody listening right now has an iPhone, first generation iPhone, and their phone has stopped, go to the forums and post, because that is actually an interesting
Yeah, I mean, I can't
question.
imagine that it could be purely fixed in software.
Right.
You know, the 3G, obviously, it has the new things. It's got a true GPS in it, which is actually this assisted GPS, which I think Craig was telling me that is actually not quite the same as like the Garmin GPSs you'd buy, you know, a few years ago. When you'd get those GPSs, they were all like line of sight or something. Or no, that's not what it was. It was something like...
yeah, they were line of sight. You're right, because you had to stick them in the dashboard. It needed to see straight up.
Right. I think these are too, but the bigger difference is like they use the old military GPS satellites that, you know, became like used to be military only, and then they became available to the general public. And I think Craig was telling me something like there's this different kind of GPS now where there's these satellites in lower orbits. I wish I knew more about this, but basically something like there are now GPS satellites that ride in a lower orbit closer to the Earth, and so you get better signal strength, especially like say if you're inside a building, whereas with old style GPSs, if you're inside and there's a roof over your head, it doesn't work.
Well, yeah, and do you remember that night where we were driving around the Walmart parking lot, and it had us pretty close when we were sitting in the car, but if I stuck it out to where it could see straight up, it got better, like it tightened the radius of where we could be at that time?
Yeah, so it must be using two types.
Right.
And then in addition to even the other two types that work on the non-3G iPhones, which is the radio towers.
The triangulation.
The
for the cell phone
triangulation,
tower.
right, and then also the stuff where it detects local Wi-Fi hotspots that have been registered. So
now that one, I want more information on that too, because that seems wild.
Well, it's actually pretty straightforward, and I can't remember the name of the company off the top of my head right now, but you can go to their website. And basically, you know how with Google Street View, where they just took a van and they just drove around and took pictures in Street View, and that's how they populated the data? They do the same thing. This company does the same thing. They drive around in vans, in populated areas, and then they just do like tumbling, Wi-Fi tumbling, except that when they find networks, they just register where they are at the time, and then they just add that to a huge database.
Seems wild.
Oh yeah, it's a good idea. And
is it legal? I mean, I guess it has to be.
I guess it is. I mean, the Wi-Fi networks are publicly broadcasting their unique network ID openly, so they don't even actually join the network. Their stumbling software that they run just detects that, and then it records it. And apparently, it's unique for every single Wi-Fi base station.
Well, this is interesting. My phone just told me that there are 2 updates to 2 of the apps that I have right now.
Oh, really? I
Which I
haven't
guess
gotten
is
any.
it's a nice segue into the App Store stuff. But I
Well,
got
let
an
me
eBay.
finish this bit on the thing I was saying about this company, because
Okay.
the other neat thing about it too is they have a piece of software you can download. If you have a laptop, you can download this piece of software. I think it runs like in a Java runtime. And if you have a GPS, like even just a USB one that you can plug into your laptop, you can submit data to this service, and then it will work with the rest of the other devices like the iPhone that use that. And so I'm thinking of doing this, and I haven't done it yet, but if I just plugged a GPS into my iMac at home and recorded my base station and sent that data up to their website, I believe that any iPhones that come near my apartment and my base station, the accuracy of their location would be much improved.
Huh. That's kind of interesting.
Okay, so yeah, let's talk a little bit about the 2.0 software, which I think, as much as I think the 3G is fascinating, and I'm going to get one for the improved reception and battery and everything. To me, the 2.0 software is what it's all about.
I mean, the fact that there are true apps now instead of web apps is such a huge, huge, huge deal. I mean, the fact that we were having to go to tiny little web pages that kind of worked all right was kind of cool, but it was nothing great. And now this is the real deal.
Yeah. And for those of us like myself who, we hacked our iPhones and installed our own third-party apps, this isn't a whole new thing that we've never seen before, but it's nice to have something official, and it's done very elegantly, much more elegantly, of course, than some user-created thing, which was, I'm not trying to poo-poo on the homebrew stuff that was done, but, I mean, this is really nice. It's done, nice third-party support, and the first selection of titles is pretty good. I mean, there's no super killer apps out there, but there's been some real surprises. For example, one of I think the hidden gems of the library is that program Shazam.
Yeah, that thing blew me away.
Yeah, the ability to just put the iPhone up to any audio recording of a song, and even with a lot of noise in the background, and just sample it for 30 seconds. They send that up to a server, and then 10 seconds later, it'll tell you everything about that song.
Well, and honestly, there's already come something down the pike that's outdoes Shazam now, called Madomi. It'll do the tagging of the radio, like whatever's actually being played, but it will also do speech to text recognition, and you just say the song title, and it'll come up with everything it has on that title. And then from there, you can click on it, see YouTube videos of it, buy it from iTunes. There are 3 things that it does. You can say it, like say the title, you could play a song for it like on the radio, or you could sing it. And you literally sit there and hum or sing a little bit of it, and it'll gauge. It says usually around 10 seconds is good, and it'll figure it out. And it did. I mean, it was amazing. I just hummed like Yesterday by the Beatles and You Are My Sunshine and just silly things. Then it would go, here are the options.
Yeah, those are cool. They're cool apps, although they're really more cool because of what's happening on the server side, which means it doesn't really have anything real special to do with the iPhone. I just think the fact that you could do that now.
Well, have you ever seen one like that before the iPhone?
Well, I've heard about them. I've heard that,
yeah, but have you ever played with one?
No.
I mean, the iPhone is your gateway.
Yeah, it is true. I'm kind of find more interesting is the apps that really are like custom to the iPhone that you couldn't do on other things, other devices. Like, for example, some of the games that are out there right now, like the Super Monkey Ball that came out, where it's all based on the tilt axis sensor. When you tilt the device, it tilts the gameplay and the screen. I mean, that's stuff like that. I think if Sega and EA and a bunch of other third-party developers jump on board, I can really see the iPhone becoming a legitimate competitor in the whole mobile gaming market.
Oh, I think it'll have about as much ability to do that as the Wii did in traditional gaming. I think it's cute for a while, but then eventually you're going to want to hit a button and know that he's going to do what you tell him to do.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't think people should underestimate how many people are going to have this device, and I think that there's going to be unique gameplay experiences you can only have on it.
Well, and that's the same way with the Wii. The problem is then after you do that for a while, you're like, okay, that's all this does.
I guess. I see what you're saying. I mean, but still, the Wii is a huge phenomenon that's successful, and so I think I kind of see if that's what you're going to compare it to, then I think that's good.
Well, yeah, I just think it's different. I don't think it's going to give the DS a run for its money by any means. But I think that there's money to be made in the iPhone gaming market. I just don't think it's going to be a major player.
Yeah, I don't know if it could outdo the DS just because of DS's price point and game library, but I'd love to see the iPhone game library just explode with a lot of titles that you just can't play on any other device. I think that would be really interesting and exciting.
Well, I really like Enigmo. You were talking about Monkey Ball. I'm having much more fun with Enigmo, which is, I guess that's not really using the tilt thing, but that's a nice little, uses the pinch feature where you zoom in, zoom out, and you can you can rotate the pieces. I think that's a very cool game.
Yeah, I think that people are kind of experimenting right now with the tilt axis sensor and the touchscreen stuff, the multi-touch stuff. They're kind of trying it out, but somebody somewhere is going to come across a killer app when it comes to games on the iPhone. Something that, some kind of new type of game that people haven't thought of that uses the tilt axis sensor and the touchscreen in a way that people haven't thought of before, and that's going to be the killer app, I think.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is a nice segue into games, I guess, and E3 that happened last week.
Oh yeah.
What were the big things that you were watching for E3, or were you? I mean, you're not as gung ho of a gamer as I am, but were there things that you were like, when E3 happens, this is what I'm going to watch for?
Well, I mean, I watch the keynotes. I don't watch them in real time, but like I do, like say a Macworld conference. But I always watch them that evening after they've been recorded, and so I watched all three of the keynotes: Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. I was intrigued by Microsoft's the most. It's funny. I mean, Microsoft they're doing a lot right. They just keep doing stuff right. I think this show ought to be called the Action Corp Radio, sponsored by Microsoft sometimes, because we just keep going off about how good they are. But I mean, you go on to NeoGAF or any big gaming forum and you read the comments, and I mean, or you go and you read Penny Arcade, and it's the same thing. I mean, it's like Microsoft is doing things right, and Nintendo and Sony are just, they're kind of, they're not. I mean,
yeah. And I won't say that Microsoft had a 100% bang up show, but they definitely had the strongest keynote, in my opinion. I thought that they were the new dashboard, very cool. The Netflix partnership, very cool. A lot of the games that they were showing were really great. Really, the only thing to me that seems kind of silly was that avatars thing. Major Nelson was actually on Twit this week, and Leo Laporte, I don't know if he was quoting someone else or if he coined it, but he called, two Major Nelsons, not face, but in a conversation with Major Nelson, called the avatar system the Me Too's.
Well, that's what it is.
And that's what it is. And now, Major Nelson had a very good answer to that, which was, Nintendo didn't create avatars. They put their own spin on it, and this is our own spin on something that we know is successful.
Yeah, I don't know. You can call it a spin, but I'd probably call it a 1/16th pirouette. I mean, the thing is practically the identical. I mean, aside from their bodies, they have exactly the same faces. I mean, they just said, oh, people really thought those Miis on the Wii was, really popular. People were really kind of gushing about that. Well, we'll just do that. And they did exactly that. And I mean, they're doing it right. I mean, you're right. They're taking the best parts of what made the Mii popular. Like, I'm going to create this unique identity, and then I'll use that in my games, for example. And so, right. You create your identity, your avatar, and then suddenly it starts popping up in games. And that's smart. That's good. But just the way that they did it, where it's like the same exact caricature, with the exception of like a more, sort of super deformed but more goofy-looking human-esque body. But the same facial expressions and everything. I mean, when I saw that, I kind of went, the new dashboard is so slick. The interface is really cool. It looks to me like a mix between like an Apple TV and a media center, a Microsoft Media Center. And it is so slick, and it's got all this neat reflections, and everything is real sharp and clean. And then you've got this dorky looking me standing right there on the front screen, and you just think, man, get that off there. It would have been so cool.
Which they have said is an option. That's not something that you have to do.
Right.
What I'm hoping is that you don't have to include them in that home screen of your dash. Mm-hmm. Because every video I've seen of the new thing booting up immediately goes to the goofy avatar thing.
Well, of course.
But now the positive thing was what we were talking about a couple days ago, in that apparently developers are going to have the ability to create content for the avatars, sort of unlocking them like achievements if they want to. It's kind of going to, I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but their example was like, if you're playing a Tony Hawk game, you could unlock a Tony Hawk shirt and a skateboard for your guy or something like that.
And that's cool. I think they need to take it to the next level and like let you just change out your avatar completely. I mean, if you gave me a Sonic the Hedgehog avatar that looked like the model from the game or something, I mean, I know that there's probably limits to what they could really do and have it still be compatible with all the game titles. But if they went that route, I'd be much more interested in it, because then I'm like, well, now you're not copying the Mii so much because the characters don't even look like Mii's. Right. They look a lot cooler. But anyway.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do because of the Microsoft press briefing is I am going to subscribe to Netflix.
You know, we talked a couple episodes back about the Roku player that came out, where Netflix is really trying to get into the, you know, we're going to have a box on your television and we're going to be your service for movies. And now, by this partnership with Microsoft, it's like everybody with the 360 player that had a Netflix account and an Xbox Live account, now they're going to be able to tap into this stuff. And, I mean, there's just no reason to rent on-demand movies anymore. I mean, you pay your $9 a month or whatever it is for Netflix, and you're going to have thousands and thousands of titles available to you on demand without paying for the on-demand service.
I think this is basically Microsoft's way of justifying the fact that they're not going to support Blu-ray this year. Also, I think they're going to be, you don't need to buy it on disc, you can just download it, which has always been their mantra. It's always been their mentality. But now to partner with Netflix and make it that much easier, it's going to be a little bit more compelling. But
it is an interesting scenario. I wonder what all of other Microsoft's partners thought when they revealed this, because they're thinking, hey, you know, aren't we renting movies right now through Xbox Live?
Right.
And they must have gone, wait a minute now, hold on. But again, this new thing, this Netflix integration with the Xbox Live dashboard, it has to be said, because I think people aren't really understanding it. You have to have both an Xbox Live Gold account and you have to have a Netflix account. So you're still paying extra for this, just in the sense that you're paying extra for Netflix.
Right.
But getting back to the keynotes, I mean, you talk about all the stuff that Microsoft did. They actually showed games, and it's like, oh, wow, we've never seen this game before, or here's a new game footage that you hadn't seen before. It was games, features, all this stuff happening. And then you go to Nintendo, and it's like, yawn. It's like, oh, here's a bunch of stuff, casual gaming crap that nobody really cares about. Oh, wow, Miyamoto.
Well,
I mean,
and you shouldn't
even
say
Miyamoto.
Nobody, because they really have done a good job of cornering a market that up until now has probably not bought a whole lot of games. You know, the Nintendo, that's the thing that they're doing, is they're selling hardware to people that wouldn't necessarily buy an Xbox or a PS3.
Right.
But the problem is, and this was the big complaint at E3, was that Nintendo isn't even trying anymore for the core market of gamers.
Yeah,
they're just going for the grandmas and the soccer moms and the 8-year-old girls, and
they've written off the casual gamer completely.
Yeah,
I mean, if that's the message I'm getting.
The core.
Oh, I'm sorry, the core gamer. You're right. They've written off the core gamer from their market. I mean, they talk about, like, when they first introduced the Wii, they were like, our whole focus here is to get more people to play games, and we understand that if we make our games right, everybody will play our games. And I think what the industry has told them is that, well, yeah, the cute games that you're coming out with, they do kind of appeal to everybody, but then there's this huge segment of gamers who just don't want that. They want more. And Nintendo's saying, well, that's just not part of our business plan. Here's Mario, and then the rest of the year is all spent with stuff that just like your grandma would like to play.
Yep.
And so they released Wii Sports Resort. Oh, wow, another Wii Sports. Granted, Wii Sports was hugely popular with the Wii. It was probably its #1 title, and they didn't even sell it. It just came with the system. And yeah, there's going to be lots of people who will play that, but it's not going to be something that I'm excited about.
I think the one thing I was interested in that they announced was that adapter for the Wiimote that gives it a true 1-to-1 ratio of movement, which I think that, you know, they're kind of pimping it with the Wii Sports Resort, or I don't remember what the name of the game was.
That's
exactly.
It, yeah.
But people have always been, well, not always, but I think a lot of gamers want a Wii lightsaber game. They've been waiting, and you know, the Force Unleashed is getting ready to come out, and it's going to have, the Wii's version is going to have an exclusive fighting multiplayer aspect to it that the next gen consoles are not going to have. And I think, and I don't know if, you know, if Unleashed is far enough along in its development cycle that this thing won't matter, but I just can't imagine playing lightsaber game that isn't actually doing what you're doing. It's just gesture based. Like, well, if I fling left, then he's going to do the spin move, and if I fling right, he's going to throw his saber. And it's been weird that Wii Sports does it exactly right, and most other games don't.
Yeah, when I saw that, to me, it reeks of the old memory module for the N64. It's like, it does. I mean, think about it. It's like, you know what? Our system, it's pretty good. People seem to be okay with it, but here's this little thing, we're going to improve our system, which to me is just another way of saying, well, our system wasn't good enough, and now we're just going to try to fix it after the fact.
Well,
That's what I
don't necessarily mind that mentality. I mean, the same thing could be said about the Xbox dashboard then. It's like, this is all right, but this is the good one.
Yeah, but to have to buy software, I mean, it's one thing if you get a software update and it gives you new features. It's another thing you have to plug in a piece of hardware into your controller just to fix things.
That's a good point.
I mean, I just think it just reeks of like, well, we didn't do it right the first time, so now we're going to fix it. I don't know. I don't know. It's like another way to look at it, I think, is to say, yeah, the motion control stuff was real big when the Wii came out. That was its selling point. So now we're going to do it again with this little attachment, but it's not nearly as exciting because now it's the same motion control but a little more accurate. So I didn't even know how they really are going to sell this to people. Because the first question in everybody's mind is going to be, well, what's different about it?
Right. And it's going to be hard to explain to grandma why that little thing is going to be more important than their thing already is.
Yeah. And then let's go to the Sony conference, which, you know, the only thing that Sony conference did that I thought was really cool was when it got to the boring part of the conference where they're supposed to talk about how much sales they had and stuff, the people who created Little Big Planet created a whole level that was nothing but a big level where they jump across and it revealed information in chart format, built using the engine like you could have built it. You know, like once you have the game,
which I heard was done in 2 days.
Yeah, which is amazing. I mean, the thing when you watch that, you're just like, that is so cool. I mean, it got big applause at the end of it because it was so clever. And that Little Big Planet is the saving grace of the PS3 right now.
Well, if it ever comes out, it's been the saving grace for 2 years.
So that is leading into the next issue, which is, of course, that nothing that they talked about at that conference couldn't have just been a rewind and a repeat of what they've said for 2 years in a row. I mean, it is to the point now it's just ridiculous. We talked about episodes back that I thought that maybe Sony was just holding back what they were going to announce so that they could really wow us at E3 with some new games and some new technology that they just were holding it close to their chest so that they could just blow people away. No. It was the same stuff they've shown for 3 years in a row now.
Well, and you were kind of playing Sony Defense Force for a while and trying to be, oh, well, maybe they got an ace up their sleeve or something. I was going, you know, even if they have one, something they're going to announce at E3 isn't going to be available for a long time. It's not like
they didn't announce anything. That was it was unbelievable. I mean, it's like, look, new footage from Battlezone 2. Wow. Yeah, we've never seen that before. I mean, it's just unbelievable. They can't. The Sony people who are Sony fanboys, I feel pity for them because they're waiting for something great to happen on that platform, and it's not happening.
Oh, and they lost Final Fantasy 13 as an exclusive too. That was huge.
Yeah, I mean, there's just nothing going right on that platform since day one. Nothing's really gone right.
I almost think that the Sony executives are fine with having this generation lost to them.
Possibly.
Because then you've got a Blu-ray drive that I might play a game. If something cool comes out, maybe I'll play a game on it. But I don't even think they're trying to make it compete with anything.
I don't know. I mean, their whole keynote was basic. You could boil it down to this phrase. It was basically them saying, when we build consoles, they last for 10 years. And so all these other people think that console cycles are only 2 or 3 years at a time, but we don't look at it that way. Our cycle is that it's a 10-year system. And so if you go back and look at the PS1 and the PS2, you know, our games, the number of titles we had and stuff like that didn't really start to vamp up till about year 3 or 4. And so we're not there yet, you know, and that was their whole point. But the problem is that even on the PS1 and the PS2, there were great titles. Lots of great titles that were coming out in those first couple of years. But where are they? I mean, you get Metal Gear Solid 4 Granted, a great exclusive title on the PS3, but where are the others? Where are all the other ones?
Right. Well, and what's funny is this is exactly what Microsoft was talking about last year with the 360. They were saying, we don't want this to be a 5-year console. We want this to be an 8-year console. So for Sony to pull this year, is like, is there anything coming out of your mouths or brains that is even remotely innovative or original or anything? I mean, their biggest game right now is a fourth in the line of sequels to a really, really good franchise that I love, but that's their number one game, is a sequel that they were even talking about maybe not even having that as an exclusive. I mean, they are really losing their third-party support.
Yeah. And you talk about like Metal Gear Solid 4 being the reason to own the system right now, because that's the one title that you can get. It's, don't get me wrong, it's really close to being the title that would get you to buy the system for me, even for me. And I'm not even like a hardcore Metal Gear fan. If you're a hardcore fan, you've already bought your PS3 just for that game. Right. Granted, so it's a system seller, don't get me wrong, but they were talking about Metal Gear Solid 4 before the PS3 was even released. And so here we are 3 years later, the game is out there now finally. And now what else? Where's the title that's supposed to come out next year to entice me? They didn't announce anything.
Right. Yeah, they really kind of blew it. You know who else blew it? Ubisoft today came out with a press release saying they're delaying Splinter Cell further. Now, we didn't even come close yet to when the first delay was supposed to have happened, where it knocked it back from October to sometime in April. But now, sometime between April of 2009 to March of 2010. So I really think that the franchise is dead in the water, and they're just trying to break it to us easy by pushing it off so far that everybody forgets about it. I mean, the rumor of Ironside walking and the fact that they kind of went back to drawing board is just, it's bad news.
I think you need to give up.
The only way they can save this franchise is, Black Bolt and I were talking earlier today, is if they potentially just revamp and just start retelling it from a different Splinter Cell's point of view, a younger, like a more, he was saying a two-dimensional character, just kind of a less about the person, more about the bigger picture. But I kind of like the fact that it involved Sam and his personality. But again, I think if they recast Sam's voice, there's going to be such a disconnect for the players, for the fans of Splinter Cell. It's going to be too hard to take.
So were there any other titles from E3 or any other news from E3 that you can think of that was kind of cool? I mean, go ahead. That
Spider-Man Web of Shadows kind of is sneaking up on things. Every once in a while, I'll just see a little fragment of it, which they're actually saying, and I can't imagine this is true, but what they're saying is that this game is going to have as many Marvel characters in a game as there's ever been. Wow. And I would almost believe it if I hadn't played Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and there is everybody in that one. So I don't know, that maybe they're just saying more Spider-Man villains and I was misunderstanding the quote or what, but it just looks basically like it's going to be a Spider-Man game that's not going to be a slave to a movie plot, and they can actually take their time with it and make it how they want to.
Another game that they showed at E3 in playable form for the first time was, although I think it was being played by a representative, was Fallout 3.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So I'm really excited about that because as a big fan of Oblivion, I mean, this is really kind of the next game to come out since Oblivion from Bethesda that is in the same style. It's a totally different universe. This is like a post-apocalyptic thing, but it's going to be that same core gameplay, and so I'm really excited about that game.
Gosh, Bethesda knows how to make a game, knows how to make a world, an immersive world.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's Fable 2. They showed more Fable 2. They've been showing Fable 2 for a long time. The first thing that Peter Molyneux said when he walked out onto the stage was, Fable 2 is finished, which was so cool, and everybody clapped and like, yay, finally. So, yeah, that's really good. And some of the stuff they showed with that, the Fable 2, where it's going to have this really neat system where as you're running around your world, if your friends are online playing Fable at the same time, and you just happen to be in the same part of the world as they are, you will see them represented as a little glowing orb moving around in their world, separate from your game. And if you want to, you can just walk right up to them, and they'll see you, vice versa. You'll walk right up to them, push a button, and then you will either join their world or they will join yours, and then it's instant co-op.
Yeah, almost like a little ghost floating around your world. There'd be like a little blue ball or a red ball.
Yeah, it's such a great concept.
That means that even if you're not technically playing a game with them, that Xbox is still tracking all of your friends. That's wild.
Yeah, even if they're in another part of the world, right? And so
Right.
I'm thinking we may finally get that one thing we've always wanted, which was a kind of Oblivion-like game with real co-op multiplayer. What was that one that totally was, you could flush it down the toilet? It was so terrible. What was that?
Two Worlds?
Yes. So Two Worlds was supposed to be that game, and it failed miserably. Now Fable 2 looks like it's going to finally kind of deliver that.
Yeah.
Well,
what are you playing right now?
Yeah, speaking of Oblivion, we were recently playing Oblivion again. We popped that back in. How many hours do you have in Oblivion?
I can't remember. The last time I paid attention was it was somewhere around 160, which is ridiculous. I went back into my achievements, and I was looking at, when I got what. My first achievement was in March of 2006.
Yeah.
So I've been playing that game on and off for 2 years.
Yeah.
More than 2 years.
I'm
2 years and a quarter.
I'm closer to completing all of the achievements than you are. I think I've got somewhere in the range of around 230 hours in that game. And I'm still working on finishing out the Dark Brotherhood, which I know if anybody's ever played Oblivion would tell you that's like one of the funnest quests to play. And I've saved it for last. And so I'm kind of working on that right now, and I've done everything else. Once I do that, I think I'll have almost every achievement for that game. I've never, ever, in any Xbox Live game, ever gotten every achievement. So what a wonderful game. That was the first title I ever bought, and I'm still playing it. I love it. Love that game.
Well, and the next thing we're going to get ready to do here once we sign off is go test out some glitchy things in Grand Theft Auto 4's multiplayer.
Yes.
So
yeah.
That should be interesting. Hopefully, maybe we'll be able to get some sort of video on that or something.
Oh, I can plug in my camcorder and we can record some of that. That's a good idea. Maybe we can even post it. Although those videos are available on YouTube from other places, people who discovered the glitches and so forth. But I think I'd rather record it just for me and you to have for posterity.
That'd be cool. Yeah, and we could always throw it up on Action Corp. All right, well, let's wrap things up here. This is a nice little conversation we had. I know we're kind of doing these more impromptu now, and I'd like to get more in the swing of things, but this was good. So I was with Chris. This is Seth. If you have any comments, questions, anything, visit our website, actioncorp.net. Jump into the forums. We'd love to hear from you. Until then, we'll talk to you next time.